So my name is Yuhua Ding, curator of the Immortal Magu, a 16th century Chinese painting up close. I am thrilled to welcome you to this special event, Immortalizing Magu, the conservation of a Chinese painting. The mounting of Chinese painting is distinctive Chinese craft with a history of more than 1,000 years. In the 17th century, the Book of Mounting, 装潢志, states a painting conservator is in charge of a painting's fate. Today, we are honored to have Jing Gao, a world-leading conservator of Asian paintings, share his first-hand insights from this year-long conservation project. First, let me introduce our three guests. Jing Gao, conservators of Asian painting. Before locating to the US, Jing studied and worked at the Paris Museum from 1973 until 1985. There, he learned Chinese paintings conservation and mounting techniques from master mounters and craftsmen. In 1988, Mr. Gao began working for the University of Michigan's University of Art. At the time, Mr. Gao was the first and only conservator of Chinese paintings working in the United States for a museum or institute that collects Asian art. In 1995, Jing joined a Museum of Fine Arts at the Cornelius Van de Star Conservator of Chinese Paintings, a newly created position within the Asian Conservation Studio, where Jing has undertaken many important painting conservation projects and mentored and trained new generations of conservators. And the second panelist is Deborah La Camera. Yeah, come on. Deborah is a partner and a senior conservator at the Studio TKM Associates, a private conservation practice in Metro Boston, specializing in the conservation of historic and artistic works of art on paper. Her studio provides conservation services to museums and institutions that lack their own conservation facilities and assists individuals in preserving their private collections. Deborah received a dual Master of Arts in Art History and Conservation from the Institute of Fine Arts Conservation Center, New York University. She completed advanced level training program at the Strauss Center for Conservation, Harvard University, and worked as a fellow in Paper Conservation Lab of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And our third panelist, give a cheer to Berit Raines. Berit Raines is a junior at art history major and a chemistry minor with additional coursework in studio art, seeking to pursue a career in art conservation. She was a curatorial intern at the Davis Museum during summer 2025, designing a digital multimedia tour of tools used in conservation of the Immortal Magu. Since fall 2025, she has worked as an Albright Institute student researcher with the Davis Museum curator Dr. Nicole Bring. This coming summer, she will continue to broaden her experience in museum work as an intern at the Robert Kowalski collections in Prague. Wow. And I also want to just introduce my curatorial research Eric class 2028. Today she is here helping the projector and will timing the project. Thank you. Oh, not last. Today I also want to thank all the curators and the conservators of Asian art from Boston Fine Arts Museum, Harvard Art Museum, and the Peabody Access Museum all the way from Salem, who are here for the talk to support the program and to promote Asian art. Thank you, everyone. To begin, I would like to provide a brief introduction to the conservation project of the current exhibition. Immortal Magu, a 16th century Chinese painting up close. The painting Immortal Magu you see here was donated in 1983 by Louis Levin, class of 1942, to Wellesley College. Magu was a Taoist deity associated with longevity. When the college received the painting had suffered significant damage, including extensive silk losses, numerous creases and cracks, and severe water stains. It was titled Female Immortal Picking Herbs, with a round title and poor condition. The painting stayed in storage for 40 years. As the first curator of Asian art at Davis, I was able to study the piece, redate it, and rename it, and curate an exhibition that highlights the significance of conservation and mounting in the preservation and appreciation of Chinese painting. The Immortal Magu is painted in ink on plain weave silk. Once the painting is created, the mounter will begin their work, adding backing and silk borders, and taking many steps to ensure the painting's beauty. So here you see the conservation timeline. So really the painting started, conservation is from May 2024. So starting from examining painting using raking light and micro photography. And then you can see in June, and the summer is busy, from June to August to September, there's many steps from prepare for the relining, clean surface, apply facing, remove backing, apply the first lining, remove the facing, apply second lining, add it, reinforce some strip. I want to just tell you there's a lot of work here. And then the November to March 2024, the painting is resting on a drawing board for almost 6 months. And then pick up the March, spring 2025, so back to the prepare mounting silk, adding silk border, final backing. Wow, then continue resting, stretching on the dyeing board. Finally, September 2025, the final resemble is done. So now the painting come back that time. So because of the painting is old, right? It has its own old mounting. So conserving this painting is more complicated than mounting a new one. So here, we will show the video, which I want to say thank you to Berit. She created this wonderful video from thousands of photos and videos taken in the conservation lab. Let's enjoy. Thank you, Berit, for creating this video which documents the effort and the work that the conservators invested in the painting, repair, and the remounting. Thank you. So today, our conversation will start with discussion of the pre-treatment. So before conservation, the painting was photographed and its conditions documented using raking light, microscopy, and other methods. The painting's condition and the technique were determined to plan the treatment. In this very first step, Deborah, can you talk about how you and Jing prepared the condition report and how important the pre-treatment is for conservation?
I want to say welcome, everybody, and thank you, Yuhua, and the entire team at the Davis Museum, and to Jing Gao, who's a wonderful mentor, for including me in this project. As Yuhua indicated, examination and documentation is the very first step in any conservation treatment. And it's crucially important that we do this in order to understand the methods and materials and techniques of manufacture of the painting, execution by the artist, as well as to fully understand what the condition of the painting is at the time that conservation is being proposed. And gathering all that information, then we're able to devise a treatment protocol that is best tailored to that particular individual work of art. And so we have a lot of tools now at our disposal for examining works of art. Some of them are quite basic, in fact. For example, light. It's simple, but it's perhaps our most important tool. We can adjust our light in a lot of ways to illuminate particular aspects of the painting. And in this case, Yuhua has put up on the screen some photos taken with light, what we refer to as raking light. So basically, that very simply means that the light is placed at an oblique angle to the painting, such that the light rakes across the surface of the painting, illuminating the three-dimensionality of the surface. In particular, in this painting, it allows us to see the extent of the cracking and tenting that had occurred within the painting over the years of rolling and unrolling. We also are able to do other things with the light. For example, we can move ourselves. We can view the light at the angle of incidence equal to the angle of incidence of, our angle of viewing is equal to the angle of incidence of the light, and that allows us to see things like changes in surface sheen. In it, we can go on and on in terms of the ways that we modify light. For example, we can use different wavelengths of light, like instead of using visible light as we were here, we can use infrared light, ultraviolet light, or even X-rays. But we can move on to sort of some more technical examination. And in this case, you can see Yuhua examining the weave of the silk under a stereo binocular microscope. And what she was able to see by looking through the microscope was 3 distinct types of weave. One, the weave of the original painting, and then 2 weaves of distinct campaigns of film material. And so we document that digitally with digital maps so that we have that information preserved for the people who come after us. But we also did an analog map in this case. So Yuhua is showing you, this is a 1-to-1 map, basically simply produced by laying Mylar over the painting and tracing with colored Sharpie pens. And what this allows us to do is to document all aspects of the condition of the painting. And we're able to continually refer to this analog map throughout the treatment process. As the painting gets flipped upside down, as it changes in appearance from wet to dry, we can reference this map throughout the treatment in order to continue to understand what we're seeing. So if you want to come up at the end, you're welcome to come up and look at our map.
Thank you. Okay. This is a very important part, and I'm glad I brought the conservation map because it was really amazed me. I think I needed to show it. Okay, so next question is, what did we discover after we removed the backing? So prior to the painting's conservation, I had a question regarding the materials, especially the type of silk used. In China, we know 2 primary type of silk are employed for painting. One is sized with glue and alum, a process commonly associated with gongbi painting, which is characterized by meticulous, highly detailed brushwork and vibrant color. The other is a raw silk, which does not involve adding glue or alum, and it's more commonly used for xie painting with freehand brushwork. So Jing, based on this conservation, based on your expertise, could you tell me which type of silk was used for this immortal Magu painting? And additionally, was the silk dyed before the painting was applied?
I think the painting used kind of raw silk and without sizing. If the size, the kind of like the color will stay on the surface, so it won't penetrate to the back of the painting. But you can see the ink already penetrates to the back of the paper, back of the silk. And the silk getting darker over the time is that's a natural kind of aging process. The base of the silk is not really dyed. But at that time, the color may be a neutral, kind of natural neutral color, not the white as the silk right now. It's all bleached. So.
Thank you, Jing. That's actually very important to me. You know, when I teach students, I may made a mistake here. So I always, you know, as a curator, when you learn the silk painting, you will tell students from the piece from MFA, this very gongbi style painting, ink on silk or color on silk, this type of silk was sized with glue and alum. But today you told me, not today, through the conservation we know, as you mentioned, because when you remove the backing, you can see the ink penetrate the silk. So you ensure me this is a silk is not treated, it's not sized, and thank you. So all students here, now you understand. That's one knowledge we learned. And also, what did we discover? I want to just quick mention here. When we remove the backing, we do see a lot of retouches, the silk patch with the retouches of the ink. So to basically modify the hairs. So when we really removed it, we see a lot of things. Thank you, Jing, again for answering me this question. So in the exhibition, we displayed a set of basic tools that Mr. Gao used to make the backing, silk borders, and hanging rods for the painting. So you can, also find this information, about these tools in the online video tour on Bloomberg Connect. I know, Berit, who worked on the Bloomberg online tool for the conservation tools, has many questions for Jing and Deborah. It's yours.
Good. Mr. Gao, I learned about many tools you use in the conservation of the immortal Magu that are unique and unexpected for people not familiar with the conservation of Chinese paintings. I'm particularly interested in the knife shaped like a horse hoof. It's a very unique shape and requires a very precise hand to use. When was this tool invented, and what is the advantage of using this tool to cut paper and silk during the conservation of paintings?
So the Chinese mounting history has more than 1,000 years, and there's not a lot of the documentation talking about the tools, and not until the later Ming Dynasty there's a book about talking about the mounting. In the book they mention the cutting knife like a horse hoof shaped knife with a round edge. Yeah, this is an example from our Japanese conservators. And you can see the knife have a round kind of edge. And later on, probably recent couple hundred years, the Chinese cutting knife all become straight edge. But they have the similar kind of character. They all have one side have the beveled edge, and another side is flat. So the flat side can be against the straight edge or ruler, so to make a precise cut.
Wonderful, thank you so much. When I visited Studio TKM to observe the final steps of conservation, I was surprised to see river stones and insect wax as conservation tools. Can you explain why stone and insect wax are used in the final steps of painting conservation and how important these tools are?
Yeah, the burnishing the backing of the scroll after final drying process is kind of like because of the multiple layers of paper involved in the mounting, so kind of like make the paper with burnish it, make it more compact and make it a little bit flexible to ruling. Otherwise, very, very stiff, you're not burnishing it. And we use the wax, it's kind of insect secretion wax, and it's melted and make the shape. But in Japan, they all use a kind of powdered format. Yeah. And in Japan, they all use also the string of beans. And beans, they use not this kind of solid kind of wax, they use a powdered kind of dab onto the back, kind of smooth it. But in Chinese, we use kind of the solid insect wax, and just go through the backing, not really coat the backing. The function is just for the kind of lubricating and reduce the friction between the stone and the back of the painting surface.
Wonderful, thank you so much. That's a really interesting experience to see the raw river stone on the back of the painting. It was really surprising, but it makes a lot of sense why it would be the best tool for the job. Regarding conservation tools and materials, I have a question about the two adhesives funori on the left and wheat paste on the right. The funori is a seaweed-based adhesive, and the second is made from wheat starch. What's the difference between these two adhesives? I know funori is a Japanese adhesive. Can you tell us what adhesive the Chinese paintings mounter usually uses, and why, in this case, you used funori instead of that traditional paste?
Funori kind of like a weaker kind of adhesive, and the wheat starch paste kind of the stronger adhesion. And we usually do the mounting, we use the wheat starch paste. And in Japan, they use some aged paste. So they made the paste and store for 10 years, and it's more softened and more smoother. But we don't have the aged paste. We just use a kind of wheat starch paste and in different process. So we dilute to the different kind of thickness in different process. And for the funori, we just use for the facing. Facing is a temporary kind of surface protecting for the silk painting. When we remove the backing paper, the silk can be moved, like a fabric, it can move. And we do the facing just for temporary kind of fix the surface, so the silk will stay on, not moving around. So. And funori used in Japan for a long time. But I asked our Japanese conservator, and he told me the conservator in Japan started using funori as a facing kind of adhesive, probably around the 1950s, around that period of time. So, in China, they probably still use a different kind of method. They use the paper like a coat with a tone oil. It kind of make it less kind of water penetrable. So they use that kind of paper and the paste to do the facing, kind of different method.
Thank you. That was really interesting. And I really enjoyed seeing that these adhesives weren't manufactured when you bought them. They were made by you and Deborah. There were lots of videos of the process of cooking the seaweed and of like refining it into this paste that was used for the facing, which I wouldn't have expected to be part of the process. That was interesting to learn.
Okay, so we will show the paper when just Jing mentioned the paper with added the tone oil. So later we'll show this. Wait a moment. Okay. So here I want to really quick give a photo shots of our installation in the exhibition. So this is we call the touching station. So each of the steps involved a different type of the silk and the papers, and you are allowed to touch them. They're all different. So in this conservation, Jing used the paper not only Chinese strand paper, but the two type of Japanese paper, one industrialized rayon paper, and one Taiwanese paper. So my question will relate to paper. So regarding the paper, so Jing, you basically just talk about facing, right? The paper, the facing steps, you actually use the rayon paper. And can you just give us a little bit more detail about in the past what the Chinese paper used for this step? Yeah.
So in China, traditionally they use the paper coated with tone oil. Yeah, you can see the picture, and the finished piece are like on the right. So, and they put the paste on the surface of the tone oil trace paper and put on the surface of the silk painting, and to do for the temporary surface protection, and later on, kind of when I came to the Boston Museum and we have a Japanese conservator, and in the studio we kind of change ideas, and I started adopting different kind of paper and some of the Japanese kind of mounting method and materials. So you kind of incorporate in this kind of this immortal Magu painting process.
So what actually differences between the tone oil? I just curious. Is it when you choose the rayon paper for facing compared to the tone oil treated paper? What is differences? It's like which I know definitely better because we use another paper.
Yeah, I think they use the Funori and the rayon paper is make easier to remove the residue of the adhesive, like the Funori is easy to dissolve in the water, but paste a little bit harder to remove.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Now answer again my curiosity about this process. So the next we continue the paper. So in addition to the two Japanese paper, actually Jing also applied one Taiwanese paper called the Okay, so here we see the Japanese paper, the mizo paper used for the second lining, and on my side, this image is showing Jing used the pineapple paper from Taiwan, using as the last the backing paper. So I know, as an art historian, I know Zhang Daqian used in it, particularly in 1970. So the paper being known for the painting, used for painting. So Gao, when did you begin to use this pineapple paper in your conservation, and what led you to choose the Taiwan paper?
The Taiwan kind of pineapple paper probably started production in 1970s, and later on, I think after 2000, and some of the people in the Public Museum in Taipei start using the pineapple paper, and they're I think 2018 and 2019 in the ASE meeting, there was some presentation talking about the pineapple paper production and how they use it in the conservation in Taipei Museum. So after I learned from my colleague from Taipei, actually our Chinese conservator from Taipei, the Xingchen, and kind of introduced me to that paper. So we started kind of discuss it with each other and also with a Taiwan conservator. So we started try to use a pineapple paper, because pineapple paper has a more kind of stronger, it's a longer fiber, a little bit stronger than the Xuan paper. So, but we just use it for the outer layer, very outer layer of the in the scroll. So.
I want to emphasize the paper in this Immortal Magu painting is because this is a conservation for a Chinese painting. However, back of this painting is across Asia. So we have Chinese paper, we have two Japanese paper, we have Taiwan papers, we have a real paper. So I really want to say this is not a project just for Chinese art, it's a project across East Asia. So that's wonderful, I want to emphasize. And then the next question I want to ask Deborah about applying Mino paper. So Deborah, your background is in paper conservation. Can you tell us more about the experience, handling this very different paper in this conservation? This photo shows that you were applying paper strips to the second lining. Can you tell more about this time-consuming process? Why is it important, and why is Japanese Mino paper used here?
So I am a Western works of art on paper conservator, so you might think, what on earth is she doing working on Chinese paintings on silk? But in fact, there are a lot of techniques that we use in Western paper conservation that come directly from the Asian tradition. So that's not a coincidence. In fact, when conservation was in its infancy as a profession here in the United States, my mentors were all looking to other cultures to understand what the techniques were in those areas of the world and how we can implement them in our own practice here. And so many of the techniques that we use in our studio daily are the same things that Jing uses in his Chinese painting studio. And one of them is this mending and reinforcing of damage with a high quality Japanese paper and wheat starch paste. And so you can see that we have torn very narrow strips of very thin, but yet very high quality and very long fibered paper that even in its very thin, in very thin sheets, it still has a lot of strength and it provides a lot of reinforcement for weak areas of the painting. So in this case, we reinforced every horizontal crease that had occurred in the painting. And the idea is that these creases, these areas of damage are weak. And as the scroll is used in the future, those are going to, unfortunately, preferentially become damaged again unless we reinforce them. So this added extra layer evens out the kind of structure and thickness of the mount so that it can roll and unroll safely in the future.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, thank you, Deborah. Actually, because I was in the TKM and looking at you adding the strengthening strips, and I cannot wait because I know this is you spend 1 month or even more to adding the creases. So this photo cannot really show the endless work, but it is endless work to add in the strips. Thank you, Deborah.
The strips also look really big on the screen, but in fact they're teeny tiny, like 1 or 2 millimeters.
Yes,
width,
yes, 1 2 millimeters.
Teeny tiny.
Yes. Okay. So one of the most surprises among our visitors is the seeing water used in painting conservation. Yeah. So called, So Jing, for here you can see is cleaning the painting service. So Jing and Deborah, can you tell us more about how water is used in painting conservation, Chinese painting or Asian painting conservation? For example, how to precisely control the application of water. In which step is water heavily involved?
So one of the ways that we sort of more apply water in a more controlled fashion is by using a suction table, and that's what you see the setup here. There's actually, it draws a vacuum. This is a table attached to a motor which is able to draw a vacuum behind the painting in order to draw the moisture directly through and not sit on the paper for very long. And so we can also very selectively wash or clean the painting in areas where we know it's more stained, or perhaps avoid the painted area, the ink layer, as necessary.
So since you mentioned this very modern technique, so Jing, can you tell us what, traditionally, in China, how we clean the painting? This is a section table, so what is the traditional procedure?
Usually we just kind of like put the water on the surface of the painting and use a towel or paper to blocking out the paper so that it will bring some of the dirt and the discolor off the painting surface. But this is kind of more safe, so the safer method to cleaning the painting. Here, you're using the old traditional method. There, towel or paper to blocking the paper, the dirt on the surface. There will be kind of like a lot of touch on the surface. Some of the friction on the action. There will be kind of make a damage to the painting.
Again, I really want to emphasize, I think today, as I understand the conservation of Asian painting in U.S., at least in Boston area, we do really cooperate with a lot of new and modern technologies. And we always challenge the tradition, but we also look for the new technology, modern method to improve the conservation, right? Oh, the most challenging step of the treatment. Jing, can you? you told me something about that. That's I made another next.
Yeah, I think the most challenging kind of steps for this project is doing the relining, because there are many steps kind of continually kind of work together, continually work in one kind of like setting. So after we do the surface cleaning, so we start doing the facing, and after facing we just kind of turn it over to do the backing removal. And so after backing removal, so we started to do the first lining. So and the kind of one kind of whole long process with many steps. So Deborah, you want to add something?
We both agreed on what this was absolutely, in my opinion, the most difficult part of the process as well. Like Jing said, once we have the facing on and we flip it over, we have to remove the final lining. So essentially the silk is the very aged, very delicate silk is being supported only by that facing paper as the entire, like every layer of backing is removed. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking and very intense, but a very slow and delicate process. And as you can see, our entire team was involved in the process of removal of the backing, because it is very time-consuming, and the painting has to stay wet for it doesn't have to. It ideally should be done in one wet stage, and so we get everybody on board to work carefully and slowly, but at the same time efficiently. So that's everybody from our studio.
And in this process, the water you use have to be very controlled. If you put too much water, the paper start very mushy, so it's hard to kind of pick it up. And if you use light water, it won't kind of soften the old paste. So you have to kind of keep the moisture kind of in perfect kind of condition, so you can remove the backing paper.
I do remember that night. The whole team was working so hard. You told me, Yuhua, you can go home. You don't need here to record. We'll continue to work for hours and hours. So I left you guys alone. I'm sorry. So thank you for all this hard work. I learned so much, from the whole procedure of conservation. And then here we will go to a very important session on, we want to talk about career and conservation. We have a lot of students here. So I want to give Berit, who aims to pursue a career in conservation, the opportunity to ask a question on behalf of students who may have the same interest.
Awesome. So, Jing and Deborah, what were the motivations and circumstances that led you to become conservators?
So I go first for me, the easy. So, and for me, it's kind of just like a circumstantial case. So at that time, I have a friend who worked in the Pilot Museum, and he kind of introduced me to this kind of work. So at that time, I didn't really know the conservation or mounting, but I thought that was a Pilot Museum, that's where the emperors live, right? So why not? So I just jumped at the opportunity and started kind of training and work over there. So, and Deborah, maybe you have more inspirational? Sorry?
No. I was introduced to conservation initially as a junior studying abroad as an undergraduate in Italy. At the time, they were cleaning the Sistine ceiling, and it was sort of my first introduction to the use of science and technology in the approach to conservation of paintings. And of course, I came back fully inspired and pursued a graduate degree. And when I finished my degree, I ended up as a fellow at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which is where I was first introduced to Jing and began to kind of understand the field of Asian paintings conservation and within the American setting.
Going a little bit more in depth with you, Deborah, about how that informed your career. As you said, your background is in paper conservation, particularly with a Western focus. How did your prior experience inform your work on this project? And I'm also curious how this project has informed how you're going to move forward in your career and your projects that you're working on in the future.
So I alluded to this earlier, but the exchange or the borrowing, the adopting of techniques from the East in our practice in the West has been going on for, I'm it's kind of the second to third generation has been using these techniques. So I had a baseline understanding of how I could apply those materials and techniques to my work. But working under Jing and being able to watch his techniques, his use and understanding of materials as well as different tools has been just a life changer for our studio. We now have many, many, many more tools at our disposal that we can apply to our Western art practice. So it's been all around a fabulous experience for our team.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then one more question for the both of you in this section, specifically for the students in the audience. Do you have any advice for undergraduates interested in pursuing careers in art conservation?
So I would say that if you're inspired by this exhibition and the idea of conservation, it's important that you pursue both the three kind of aspects of conservation, which include science, art history, and connoisseurship, as well as craftsmanship and hand skills. So if you kind of feel like those are all within your wheelhouse, I would encourage you to do some more investigation into how to become a conservator. Nowadays in the United States, it does require a graduate degree, and there are limited numbers of schools that offer those degrees. But one of the best resources is ECPN. It's the Emerging Conservation Professionals Network, and it's a great list for young people to start to learn about projects and programs like this that are happening all over the Boston area. The liaison is actually here tonight, so if you're interested in getting on the list, just let us know. But that's a great way to start sort of investigating your career in conservation.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that's absolutely helpful for the students in the audience and students who will watch this video later. And then we have a brief Q&A section we sent a Google form out to some departments here for students, faculty, and staff who might be interested. And this question is adapted from Noelle Lendon, class of 2029. How do you view your conservation work as impacting this painting? Do you see yourselves as artists who work into the painting, or as preservers who bring forward past artists' works? And this can be open to both of you as well.
So for the conservation on this painting, we just try to keep the original image there, and there were some of the previous kind of conservation campaign on this painting, and there's some little bit addition to in the image, and you can see in the ropes and in the background on the trees. So there are some additions. So if we discussed with the curators in the Davis Museum. So if we remove that part, there'll be a big loss local painting. Because right now, usually we don't add any kind of lens or image to the paintings. So after discussion, we decided to leave that section there, and we just try to reduce the dark stains and try to make it more kind of even from the surroundings. And Deborah did a lot of work to the ink painting. That's tremendous work, very detailed work.
Here, I want to just chime in, as when Jing mentioned the decision we made together is actually as a part of, maybe in the traditional way, conservator is also contributing the painting the retouch of a Chinese or a Japanese painting. But in our conservation, we made a decision. We save or preserve all the older retouches. We did not add any retouches to the painting. We clean the stains in the silk. As Deborah really worked on that part. And Deborah, you actually is artist. You added do you want to tell about how you retone the tone of the silk because you clean the stain of the silk?
Yes. So this was an interesting kind of particular approach to the conservation of the painting, because the goal of conservation in this case, we all jointly decided was to use the painting not as just a beautiful painting to enjoy, but also as an educational tool, because it is a university collection and a lot of students will be using it in their learning. And so we left stages of the previous conservation or restoration of the painting intact so that when students observe the painting, they can identify different aspects of the history of the painting over time. The other approaches could have entailed removing all of that and replacing all of the old repairs with new repair. And like Jing said, retouching or not retouching, that's a big point of discussion. In this case, we did not retouch. We just toned the old repairs and the staining to a neutral tone. So I have to say, in terms of bringing ourselves to the painting, like I think that we are now forever linked to this painting. I think that, you know, our document, not only in our documentation, but in the fact that we had our hands and our efforts in this painting for many, many, many hours over the 2 years that it was in the studio. And so I feel like intrinsically now we are linked forevermore to this painting. And you know, in reading and looking at it, I think you will be able to kind of parcel out how our approach and our points of intervention.
I totally agree with you, Deborah. Every time I visit the TKM, of course, I see the different steps of the conservation. Every time we sit down, look at the immortal Magu, we feel like we're more closer to her, spiritually. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So thank you so much. So I have to say this is a really, really wonderful, fascinating discussion today. And I would like to give each panelist a chance to just share a final one-sentence thought about what you hope, today's audience can remember. Just one sentence, and then just one sentence that people should remember from today's talk. Anyone?
I think the conservation work like a bridge between the past and the future, and we try to do our best to kind of protecting the physical kind of integrity of the painting. So, and what to say?
I think my thought would be that while the format of a Chinese scroll appears to be so simple and elegant, it's actually a very complicated system that takes a lifetime to understand and to be able to execute effectively, which Jing has proved and is thankfully sharing with the rest of the community. So thank you so much.
Berit, you also get a voice to say.
I think my thought would be kind of going off of what Deborah said earlier, how interesting it is to see conservation used as an educational tool and have the hand of the conservator and conservators past left visible in this work. And so I just think a great takeaway and tying into Yuhua's multisensory elements in the exhibition is how conservation can be educational for the materials and the processes involved.
Thank you, Berit. So in my script, I did not actually add a free Q&A. Well, I know, surprising, but I know now I feel regret. I think I have 2 minutes left, so we will open the free Q&A. If you are interested to raise any question, one or two, I would like to hear your voices. Any person question? Yes.
Hi, I'm Xian. So I've been knowing Jing for a while. So I'm a scientist. So my question is I think painting conservation in China has been developed for a long time, for thousands of years. But now I think modern science plays a role in conservation. And for both of you, Deborah and Jing, how do you think scientists can really help during the process, either to understand the new materials or for future what a scientist can really contribute? Thank you.
So for the conservation process, the kind of science can help to analyze the materials kind of in the previous kind of mounting our conservation process and the original artwork. So that help us to understand more about the painting and for the treatment of the painting and the material compatible with the previous kind of like a treatment. So because this for the painting, the immortal kind of like a image, we can just kind of passerby for her, and his maybe last a long time. So we try to do the conservation work, and that's with the help of scientists to understand the materials, and we'll try to keep the artwork kind of last longer for generations. So.
I think, like Jing said, I think it's there's so much that science can add to both understanding the artwork as well as preserving it. And this is a whole nother panel discussion to be had, and how in particular with this painting or any other painting it could contribute. But we've had a lot of wonderful input from scientists in our projects that help us to understand the individual materials that were used in order to make a particular work of art, why they help us understand why it aged the way it did, why it looks the way it does today. It helps, like Jing said, in understanding other interventions that have happened in the past. And so there are endless ways that science adds to the process of conservation these days. It's really, and it continues to evolve as the technology becomes more informative and less invasive, and then it allows us to do even more to these very fragile old works of art.
This might be a silly question kind of about logistics. I was wondering how the process of kind of adding in new silk patches works, and if that might, or how that might affect things when you're trying to take off the backings. So I assume you can't like sew the piece on, so if there's some kind of adhesive or something else happening.
The hard question, how to answer. And I don't really know. For the Asian painting, we usually don't use a stitch something on, and we just kind of use a paper as a support for the painting, and we add the mounting material just for the decoration and for its presentation. And so hard to say how to lost my thought.
So, and your question is specifically for losses, like silk that needs to be added to fill losses?
So I think it was just about, I know you mentioned there are different silk patches, so I was assuming that like the silk was added, and then because I was assuming you can't like sew that silk on, that it might have to be added to an adhesive, and how that might affect trying to take a backing back off when there's something added on.
Right. So you can very easily displace those. So they're added with the same adhesive that's being used for each of the backing layers. The same wheat starch paste is being used also to attach the fill silk. But in the picture where we were taking the backing removal off, and in the picture in the gallery where you can see Magu's face from the back side, Right, you can see each of these little oddly shaped patches is an individual silk fill, and they do get added directly to the back of the painting, and then they get supported. They're attached with wheat starch paste, and then they're also supported by the backing papers. So it all is sort of a layering process.
Yeah, we all use the starch paste as an adhesive. For the silk to silk, we use a little bit thicker one, the paste. And for other process, we'll adjust the thickness of the adhesive. So, most of the time, we just use the weight starch paste. In Japanese painting conservation, you use the aged paste. So that's the paste can age for 10 years, and it's softened after applied to the back of the painting.
Thank you very much.
This is a very technical question. Thank you for asking. Yeah. So we have the perfect image to respond to your question. So I have to conclude today's wonderful discussion, and then I learned a lot from today's talk, and even also through preparing this talk. And I want to thank you, not just our panelists. I really thank you everyone who today joined this wonderful talk, and our curators, conservators, students, faculties, and artists, friends. Thank you for coming. And then I again want to thank you, my wonderful students, Eric Hong, 2028, and my wonderful students, Berit Raines, 2027. They all joined this project, and I hope you give them some applause. Thank you. Thank you.